Ski racing technique is composed of movements. Some movements or movement patterns are essential for effective technique. These movements or movement patterns are not techniques in themselves, but could be considered heuristics. Heuristics in the sense that they are not absolutes, but rules of thumbs that are prerequisites to exceptional performance. Omitting these elements may not lead to a ski racer's demise, but possessing them may be essential to success. These are features that, when utilized correctly, increase the chances of a proficient performance. In all ski racing, there is an inside and an outside ski. Inside and outside refers to the foot or the ski that lie toward the inside or outside of the arc the ski turn is creating. Modern GS ski racing is outside ski dominant. This is not meant to imply that 100% of the weight and pressure is on the outside ski, just that the outside ski is used primarily for the turn. There are exceptions, such as the white pass turn, which is initiated with the inside ski, as well as the skid of the stivet, which uses the inside ski to a great extent. Although when forces build up through the turn, it is the outside ski which is capable of resisting the greatest forces. So what is the role of the inside ski? It's for lateral balance, to take over when the outside ski fails, and to adjust pressure. Skiing in hard snow on a demanding line with race mentality can sometimes result in the outside ski getting away. If the inside ski is on or near the snow, it will be prepared to take over when the outside ski fails. When this happens, weight is shifted to the inside ski to finish the job. We stated that we are outside ski dominant. Adjusting pressure is a difficult task when left exclusively to this outside ski during a high demand turn with large forces. When the inside ski is on the snow, it is in a position to regulate pressure, either by leg extension to relieve some pressure or by leg flexion to add pressure back to the outside ski. This symbiotic relationship between inside and outside leg is an indispensable pressure control skill. The legs of the ski racer flex and extend in response to the demands during different phases of the ski turn. This flexing and extending is not unlike riding a bike. While one leg extends, the other leg flexes. This flexing and extending is often called long leg, short leg, because as the turn develops, the outside dominant leg becomes long as it extends, and the inside leg becomes short due to its flexing. The outside leg extends or gets long for four purposes. First, in response to the center mass moving away from the outside ski while it moves to the inside of the new turn to edge and resist forces. Second, it may attempt to generate early pressure. Third, actually accelerate the center of mass toward the inside of the new turn. And fourth, just to keep ski-snow contact. To explain in a bit more detail, the center mass attempts to take the shortest path possible. This means that it cuts the corners or the path that the skis make. To accomplish this, the outside dominant leg gets long to line up the center mass more toward the inside of the turn. This enables edging that is capable of balancing the external forces. The early pressure is produced by the actual extension against the snow of the outside leg. Even if early pressure is not produced, leg extension may act to accelerate the body toward the next turn. This is in contribution to the already present centrifugal effect vaulting the skier into the new turn. Lastly, the new outside leg may just try to keep ski-snow contact in response to a rather expedited center of mass crossover. At turn completion, the leg stays long in response to the extreme external forces generated from the turn. The faster the speed and/or the tighter the turn radius, the more important it is to achieve this biomechanically strong position. We will see this in the stacked outside leg segment. While long is good, too long can be a disadvantage. If the leg becomes overly extended or long, resulting in a limited range of motion, it may have difficulty absorbing terrain undulations, and other body parts will have to take over to perform the task. To achieve high edge angles, the skier's center of mass needs to move to the inside of the turn. A limiting factor in this movement is the presence of the inside leg, as it literally gets in the way. Flexing the hip and knee shortens this inside leg, giving the skier the body space needed to move inside the turn. This will be expanded upon in the hip and inclination angulation sections. Stacking refers to the skeletal system, specifically the way the bones are stacked on top of themselves. This stacking results in a stronger supporting structure compared to articulated body segments. When an athlete performs a squat, they never fail when they are in extension. This is due to the stacked relationship of their bones. Although as flexion increases, they lose this stacked advantage, and they have to rely more on their musculature. The same issue applies in ski racing. When flexed, the ski racer is not in as strong a position and cannot resist or hold the same force as when they are stacked. Of course, the ski racer cannot get totally straight legs due to the forward lean of their ski boot, but every degree of extension or flexion adds or takes away some of the ski racer's force generating capability. It should be mentioned that a long outside leg, while strong, will limit some gross and fine motor movements. With an extended leg, further extension will be limited, which could have some terrain absorption consequences and must be taken into consideration. This extended leg will also limit leg adduction and internal rotation that the leg can contribute to edge angle adjustment. This combined adduction and rotation, used for fine-tuning of the edge, is traditionally termed knee angulation. While not a strong biomechanical position for the ski racer, it is seen in elite performers. In conclusion, a stacked outside leg will allow the ski racer to enjoy more strength application during the turn. The skier moves in 3 planes. As we have mentioned previously, rotary actions are in the horizontal plane, edging is a lateral movement in the frontal plane, and pressure is in the sagittal plane. We have addressed pressure previously in the stance chapter. There, we saw that fore and aft pressure was the movement of the skier's center of mass forward towards the ski tip and an aft movement toward the tail. While we move pressure fore and aft, we can also increase or decrease pressure directly to the ski. Pressure is increased or decreased by moving the skier's center of mass away from or toward the ski. While not exactly technically correct, this is oftentimes referred to as vertical movement. In this section, we will examine some of the ramifications of this center of mass vertical movement. This will be divided into center of mass travel distance, aerodynamics, and the snow reaction force. Let's see how these 3 items are interrelated and end with the snow reaction force, which is probably the most important. So first, let's look at the distance the center of mass travels in global space. The center of mass travels left and right around the gates and from the start house to the finish line, basically across the hill and down the hill, 2 dimensions. A third dimension is the distance the center of mass moves vertically or perpendicular to the snow. This could also be calculated as part of the distance the ski racer travels, which would influence the overall time of the ski racer. Although there is a correlation with this distance and the skier's overall time, it is not a great correlation, and therefore the distance that the center of mass travels should not be used as a definitive or decisive tenet when analyzing technique. We do want to see this distance minimized, although we must be careful as to how much we emphasize it. There obviously are other intervening variables to consider, which leads us down our list to aerodynamics. Aerodynamics is a consideration in all ski events. Anyone that has rode a bike or stuck their arm out the window of a moving car appreciates the effects of aerodynamics. In the speed events, we think of piercing the air and we assume a tuck or bullet position with arms in front to slice an opening for the body to follow. While this position is important, we can also affect aerodynamics by just reducing the skier's frontal area. Arms and hands held in front of the body are an obvious advantage. The skier can also make themselves smaller simply by flexing the lower parts of the body, just like in a tuck position. While this will increase the aerodynamic advantage, there will be biomechanical performance ramifications, which leads us to the final topic, snow reaction force. The snow reaction force refers to how the ski or skis interact with the snow. We mentioned earlier in the carve section that the tip of the ski cuts or carves a trough in the snow for the rest of the ski to follow. How much snow gets plowed out of the way is related to how much kinetic energy the ski loses. The ability of the ski racer to keep this plowing to a minimum while still being able to maintain the best tactical line is essential. Skiing on a hard surface is difficult. This is because the ski does not penetrate the snow surface to any extent. This leaves the skier balanced against a very small perch. With this in mind, it is easy to understand why athletes may have the desire to slice out as deep a trench as possible. While more comfortable and easier to balance against, this deep, plowed-out abyss is not fast. Carving a turn takes forces from the ski to enter the snow. Force is a product of the skier's mass and their acceleration. While the skier cannot alter their mass, they can change their acceleration, at least the acceleration that is perpendicular to the snow. This downward acceleration is through flexion and extension of the lower body. With these flexing and extending movements, force can be altered for technical advantages, specifically ski-snow interaction. While we mention force, it is really the pressure against the ski that is important. This is due to the large surface area of the ski and to the fact that we need to penetrate the snow so we can turn. Increasing the surface area decreases the pressure. Snowshoes were invented to enable hunters to walk on top of the snow. The hunter did not weigh any less, so they had the same downward force, but their force, or weight, was distributed over a larger area. This created less pressure, and the hunter stayed on top of the snow. In ski racing, we have the same pressure concerns as the hunter. We don't want to sink into the snow any farther than is necessary to make the turn. One way to alter pressure is to tip the ski up on edge. This reduces the amount of ski base, or area, against the snow, which increases pressure. The force may not have changed, but since there is less area, or base, against the snow, there is a greater amount of pressure. The vertical movement of the skier's center mass can also directly affect pressure on the ski. The result of increasing or decreasing pressure affects the ski interaction with the snow and can have energy dissipation consequences. Extending and flexing the legs results in more and less pressure to the ski. This can be seen on the common scale. During flexion, the body or center of mass is moving downward at 9.8 meters per second or less. 9.8 meters per second squared is the speed of gravity. You cannot move downward any faster than that without some sort of external assistance. Moving the center of mass slowly downward will have an acceleration less than 9.8 meters per second squared, while a free fall drops the center of mass downward at 9.8 meters per second squared. This is the maximum that gravity can accelerate any object. This downward movement in skiing is sometimes referred to as down unweighting. Down unweighting will be up to, or in its most extreme form, at the speed of gravity. This lightening or reduced pressure is seen most often when a skier flexes or the distance between the skier's center of mass and the ski is decreased. We saw this exaggerated movement as a method of making the skis light so they could be stiveted, reducing the ski snow resistance. While the skier can adjust pressure through body movements, it is the terrain and slope that will influence the ski snow pressure when least desired. Let's look at how the body can adjust pressure under the ski to adapt to terrain and slope. Moving rapidly upward, usually through leg and/or hip extension, will increase the force on the ski as it is accelerating the body weight more than the force of gravity. We saw in the extension of the outside leg chapter that to create pressure early in the turn required an extension of the outside leg. This extension should not be confused with extended. It is the act of extending that increases pressure. This is obvious if we just stand quietly extended on the scale. We can see that pressure does not change. Pressure is only increased when we extend. So extension increases pressure and flexing decreases pressure. How much we flex and extend depends on the desired interaction of the ski to the snow. To ski fast, we carve only as much as needed. Carving plows a trough that involves pushing snow. Pushing snow dissipates kinetic energy, slowing the skier down. Meanwhile, carving too little makes it difficult to turn. This makes the depth of the carve very important. It is a fine balance between being deep enough to hold the skier and shallow enough so as not to slow the skier down. Degrees of carving is a skill that is difficult to see. Movement of the skier's center of mass toward and away from the ski is a pressure control skill that depends not only upon gross vertical movements that we see, but also on discrete movements that may be imperceptible to see. These small movements can only be delineated by the ski racer. This pressuring skill requires an aptitude and incredible finesse on the part of the ski racer. We already mentioned that the ski racing surface can be very firm. It can also be full of ruts that move the ski racer up and down, along with chatters that bounce the ski racer sideways. These surfaces, combined with vibration from the ski and the skier's body itself, make maintaining and adjusting pressure while edging and concurrent fore and aft regulation very difficult. To perform the desired and efficient reactionary response for pressure control requires a refined neuromuscular system. This is not the gross movements of skiing that we usually think of as technique, but the discrete firing of the muscles that ultimately keep the ski on the snow, or better said, in the snow. That is, in the snow, just the right amount. We see and teach flexion and extension movements as technique, although we must not be locked into a mindset that does not permit us to see the ultimate goal, that being the ski's interaction with the snow. Exercises such as long radius turns through the moguls, turning on the flexion, and hops through the turn are good for the athlete to experience and master differing pressure solutions. An understanding and appreciation for the ramifications of vertical movement, whether it is for minimizing the overall path of the center of mass, aerodynamics, or the snow reaction force, will ultimately allow us to find more time in the giant slalom course. The hip is a strong joint with a large range of motion that is located near the skier's center of mass. This makes it a strong candidate for ski-related articulation. Since separation of body parts is a key feature of any elite-level sportsman, it only makes sense that the hip should be an important joint in ski racing. Understanding the hip biomechanics is critical for understanding the strong, positive contribution it can make to skiing. The hip has its largest range of motion, about 120 degrees of flexion in the sagittal plane. Flexion in the frontal plane is only about 45 degrees, being limited by the greater trochanter on the femur, colliding with the outer side of the ilium. This ends up creating a mechanical brake which limits the hip's range of motion in the frontal plane. Therefore, the most functional flexion of the hip occurs in the sagittal plane. With this large range of motion and the resultant parallel position created initially from equal ankle flexion, the body ends up positioned biased less towards the frontal plane and more towards the sagittal plane. Flexion from the hip is used in edging actions. When watching a ski racer, see if their hip flexion contributes to the edging goal. If the athlete bows towards the ski tips, they are flexing in the sagittal plane and not influencing the edging, at least not as desired. If they are flexing unduly in the frontal plane, they are probably using their spine to flex. This movement is not recommended. The desired articulation is from the hip and will ultimately contribute to the parallel position. Ski racers need to tip the ski up on edge to facilitate turning. This can be done in a number of ways, but here we will deal only with large or whole body movements. There are basically two general methods the ski racer can do with the body to tip the ski on edge: incline the entire body or angulate the body. In reality, most turns will be a combination of the two, and differing parts of the turn will show differing amounts of inclination and angulation. Inclination is just that, the entire body inclined in more or less a straight line. This is a strong position, as all body parts are lined up as explained in the stacked outside leg section. Inclination is usually seen when the athlete has ample time between turns and there are high speeds and large forces. Inclination should be achieved after pressure has been established on the outside ski. While this inclination is successful, it should not be confused with inclination that is the result of leaning in or overly rotating. This can be distinguished by the hip out and outside ski not engaged in the snow. Angulation is a flexing of the hip, biased in the sagittal plane. This allows a large and strong range of motion. If the ski racer lacks the appropriate amount of lead change, they will essentially lock themselves into flexion in the frontal plane and reduce their athleticness by limiting their usable range of motion. Angulation should not be confused with lateral flexion of the spine. Besides not being very strong biomechanically, it is a position that can create short and/or long-term injury if the spine is allowed to move beyond its natural range of motion. Angulation allows the skier to orient his or her weight toward the outside ski in a balanced position. A highly athletic position, angulation makes it easy to release the old turn and quickly move into the new turn. Due to the lessened distance the upper body has moved into the turn, the upper body will now have less distance to travel into the next turn. This makes it a quicker lateral movement compared to whole body inclination. If the turns get tight or the course stacks up, this would be a preferred method.